It was the coldest winter morning in Chicago. Michael Thompson had nothing but his old military jacket to keep him warm after 3 years on the streets. When he saw a woman shivering at the bus stop, he didn't think twice. He simply took off his jacket and offered it to her. What Michael didn't know was that the woman was Katherine Reynolds, a CEO who had built her fortune from nothing. His simple act of kindness was about to change both their lives forever. Could one moment of compassion really bridge the gap between two completely different worlds? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The old leather journal was cracked and weathered, much like Michael's hands, as he carefully turned its pages in the dim light of St. Mark's shelter. 3 years of life on Chicago's streets were documented in neat, military-precise handwriting. Tonight he added another entry. Gave away Dad's jacket today. Couldn't watch her freeze. Some things matter more than keeping warm. The shelter's nighttime sounds surrounded him. Soft snores, occasional coughs, the squeak of ancient heating pipes fighting against the brutal winter cold. From his corner bunk, Michael could see the volunteer desk where Sarah, a retired nurse, was filling out her nightly report. She'd been the first friendly face he'd encountered when everything fell apart. "Still writing, Mike?" Sarah's whisper carried across the quiet room. She understood his nightly ritual, had seen countless veterans like him processing their thoughts. On paper, "Yes, ma'am." His response was automatic, military courtesy ingrained despite the years since his service. Trying to make sense of things. Sarah made her way over, careful not to disturb the other residents. At 65, she moved with the deliberate grace of someone who'd spent decades navigating hospital corridors at night. "You missed dinner. Again." Michael shrugged, tucking the journal beneath his thin pillow. Had something to take care of. He didn't mention the jacket or the woman at the bus stop. Some moments felt too private to share, even with Sarah. The truth was, he'd been avoiding the dinner crowd lately. Too many new faces, too many questions. The regulars understood. They'd seen enough veterans come through to recognize the signs. But the recent influx of people seeking shelter from the record cold meant more chaos, more noise, more memories he'd rather keep buried. "Tom asked about you." Sarah settled onto the edge of his bunk, her presence familiar and motherly. "Says the VA finally got back to him about your case." Michael's hands tensed on his blanket. Thomas Wheeler had been trying to help him navigate the bureaucratic maze of veteran services for months. A former Marine himself, Tom now worked as a volunteer coordinator at the shelter, dedicating his retirement to helping fellow veterans. "They found your records," Sarah continued softly. "The ones from that last deployment. Tom thinks it doesn't matter." Michael cut her off, gentler than the words themselves. "That life's gone, Sarah. I'm not that person anymore." She reached out, weathered hand covering his. "The man who gave away his only warm jacket today. That's exactly who you've always been, Michael Thompson. Your father would be proud." The mention of his father sent Michael's mind spinning back to that last conversation. The proud gleam in Senior Master Sergeant James Thompson's eyes as he handed over his prized Air Force jacket. "Take care of it, son. It's seen me through some rough times. Maybe it'll do the same for you." That was 6 months before the IED, before the nightmares, before Michael found himself unable to hold down a job, haunted by decisions made in moments that felt both like yesterday and a lifetime ago. "Your father understood sacrifice," Sarah said, as if reading his thoughts, "just like he understood that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is ask for help." Michael's fingers traced the empty space where the jacket should have been. Its absence felt strange, like missing a limb, but when he thought of the woman at the bus stop, her arms wrapped tight against the bitter cold, he knew he'd make the same choice again. "Get some rest." Sarah patted his hand before standing. "Tomorrow's another day." As she walked away, Michael pulled out his father's watch, his only remaining possession of value. The face was scratched, the band worn, but it kept perfect time, just like his father had taught him. Precision matters, integrity matters, doing the right thing matters. He thought about the woman again. Something in her eyes had reminded him of his sister Caroline, that same determined spark, even in moments of vulnerability. Caroline had tried to help after he returned, but he'd pushed her away, like he'd pushed everyone away. It was easier than admitting he didn't know how to be the brother she remembered anymore. Rolling onto his side, Michael closed his eyes, the watch clutched in his hand. Tomorrow would be colder without the jacket, but somehow the weight in his chest felt lighter. Sometimes the smallest actions carved paths to places you never expected to go. As sleep finally came, he didn't know that his simple act of kindness had already set wheels in motion that would change not just his life, but the lives of countless others who would follow in his footsteps. Katherine Reynolds stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of her corner office, absently rubbing her arms where the morning's chill still lingered. 40 stories below, Chicago's financial district hummed with activity, but her mind kept drifting. Back to the bus stop, to the weathered jacket that still carried traces of wool and whispered stories of another life. The Golden Entrepreneur of the Decade award caught the morning light on her desk, its inscription a reminder of how far she'd come. 20 years ago, she'd been the one shivering in second-hand clothes, scraping together meal money while putting herself through business school. "Ms. Reynolds," her assistant Madison's voice crackled through the intercom. "The board members are gathering for the quarterly review." Katherine straightened her designer blazer, a far cry from the borrowed jacket she'd worn home. "Thank you, Madison. I'll be right there." The boardroom was already thick with tension when she entered. 12 faces turned toward her, expressions ranging from concern to carefully masked impatience. Robert Chen, her CFO, was mid-sentence with the quarterly projections displayed behind him. "Katherine," James Morrison, the board chairman, interrupted whatever Robert had been saying. "We were just discussing the Watson merger timeline. There are some concerns about—" "The timeline stays as planned," Katherine cut in, her voice carrying the quiet authority that had become her trademark. She took her seat at the head of the table, noting how the morning's unexpected detour had shifted something in her perspective. "But first, I want to discuss a new initiative." The room stirred. Quarterly reviews followed a strict protocol, and deviations made these people nervous. They'd built their careers on predictability, on measured risks and calculated returns. "We've been talking about corporate social responsibility," Katherine continued, pulling up her own presentation, "about making a real difference in our community. This morning I experienced something that made me realize we've been thinking too small." The Golden Award in her office had been the culmination of a journey that began in a downtown shelter, not unlike the ones she'd passed this morning. Back then, Eleanor Matthews, a senior partner at a law firm, had taken a chance on a bright but rough-around-the-edges intern. That single opportunity had changed everything. "Our current charitable giving is commendable," she acknowledged, scanning the faces around her. "But it's passive, safe. What if we could do more? What if we could create a program that actively bridges the gap between talent we're overlooking and opportunities they never dream of accessing?" Robert shifted uncomfortably. "Katherine, while that's admirable, the shareholders invested in my vision," she reminded him firmly. "They invested in a company that was built on the principle that talent can come from anywhere. That success isn't about where you start, but where you're determined to go." She thought of the man at the bus stop. In that moment of raw humanity, he'd had nothing to gain and something precious to lose, yet he'd chosen to help without hesitation. It was the kind of character that couldn't be taught in business school or measured in quarterly reports. Madison appeared at the door, sliding a folder onto the table beside her. The morning's market reports, social media analytics, the usual metrics of success. Katherine let them wait. "I'm not asking for permission," she said finally, her voice soft but unmistakably firm. "I'm telling you what's going to happen next. Because sometimes leadership means remembering what it felt like to be on the outside looking in. Sometimes it means recognizing that the best investments we can make don't show up on balance sheets. The room was silent. Through the windows, she could see her reflection overlaid on the city skyline. Power suit, perfect hair, every inch the CEO they expected. But in her mind, she was still that girl in borrowed clothes, clutching a scholarship letter like a lifeline. Now, she straightened her papers. Let's talk about exactly how we're going to change some lives. The security footage played on Catherine's laptop, grainy but clear enough. She'd watched it 17 times now, each viewing revealing new details. The slight hesitation before he removed the jacket, the careful way he draped it over her shoulders, his decisive stride as he walked away without looking back. "Madison," she called through the intercom, "get me the bus stop camera feeds from the past month and contact city services. I want to know about any registered homeless veterans in that area." Her assistant appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. "Already done. The transit authority sent over their footage." Madison paused. "Ms. Reynolds, are you sure about this? The board members have been calling all morning." Katherine minimized the video window, revealing dozens of open tabs: homeless services, veteran support organizations, employment programs. What are they saying? They're worried this is personal, that the incident this morning affected you too deeply. Madison set a fresh coffee on the desk. Mr. Morrison suggested taking a few days to think it through. "Tell me something." Katherine turned to face her assistant of 7 years. "When Eleanor Matthews hired me as her intern, what do you think her board said?" Madison smiled slightly. "Probably the same things." "Exactly." Katherine stood, walking to where her old Golden Award sat. Everyone wanted her to play it safe. Instead, she risked her reputation on a scholarship kid with a chip on her shoulder and everything to prove. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across her office as she continued her research. The man's military bearing had been unmistakable, the way he stood, how he assessed his surroundings. A veteran, almost certainly. But finding one homeless veteran in Chicago was like looking for a specific snowflake in a blizzard. Her phone buzzed. Robert Chen again. She let it go to voicemail. The transit authority footage provided new angles, new perspectives. In one frame, she caught a glimpse of something. The veteran entering a side street that led towards St. Mark's. Shelter. It wasn't much, but it was a start. "Madison," she called again. "Contact St. Mark's. I want to know about their veteran program." Hours passed. The city lights began to twinkle on as Katherine compiled her notes. The jacket, standard. Air Force issue, at least 20 years old. The watch he'd checked before walking away. Military precision in the movement. Small details forming a larger picture. Her computer chimed with an email from St. Mark's. Their veteran coordinator, Thomas Wheeler, had agreed to meet tomorrow. Morning. Katherine glanced at her schedule. Board meetings, investor calls, the Watson merger discussion. "Madison," she reached for her intercom one last time. "Clear my morning tomorrow, all of it." "The board won't like that." "The board doesn't have to like it." Katherine began gathering her things. "They just have to understand that some opportunities can't wait for shareholder approval." Later that night, in her penthouse apartment, Katherine stood at her window watching the snow fall. The same snow that man would be facing without his jacket. She'd made a career out of calculated risks, of seeing potential where others saw problems. Tomorrow would be another gamble, but something told her it might be the most important one. Yet, her phone lit up with another message from Robert. "Katherine, please be rational about this. One random act of kindness doesn't justify restructuring our entire corporate outreach." She thought about the jacket, about the weight of it on her shoulders and the warmth that had nothing to do with wool or fabric, about how a single moment of compassion had reminded her of everything she'd once promised herself she'd do if she ever had the power to make a difference. Katherine picked up her phone and typed, "You're right, Robert. One act of kindness doesn't justify changing everything." She paused, then continued, but it can remind us of why we need to. See you after my meeting at St. Mark's. And Robert, bring the community outreach budget. We're going to need it. Setting down her phone, she turned back to the falling snow, to the city lights blinking like stars fallen to earth. Somewhere out there, a veteran who'd given away his only warmth was writing in a journal, not knowing that his simple act of humanity was about to spark a chain reaction that would ripple far beyond one cold morning at a bus stop. St. Mark's shelter looked different in the morning light. Katherine had driven past it countless times without really seeing it, just another brick building in a city full of them. Now, clutching her designer handbag and a cardboard tray of coffee cups, she noticed everything. The carefully swept steps, the neatly printed sign listing service hours, the faded flag hanging beside the entrance. Ms. Reynolds. A man in his 60s approached, extending his hand. Tom Wheeler. We spoke on the phone. His handshake was firm, his eyes sharp beneath grey brows. Katherine noticed the Marine Corps pin on his lapel, small but proudly displayed. Thank you for meeting me so early. She handed him one of the coffees. I understand you work with veterans here. Tom gestured toward his office, a small room with walls covered in military photos and thank you letters. Going on 10 years now, though I suspect you're here about one veteran in particular. Katherine settled into a worn chair, taking in the organized chaos of his desk. The man with the Air Force jacket, from yesterday morning. Michael Thompson, Tom nodded, his expression carefully neutral. He's been with us about 3 years. The name hit Katherine like a physical force. Michael Thompson, not just the homeless veteran anymore, but a person with a name, a history, a story. Tell me about him. Tom took a thoughtful sip of coffee. What makes you think I should? It wasn't hostile, just protective. Katherine recognized it. The same instinct that had made Eleanor Matthews grill her for 2 hours before offering that life-changing internship. Because yesterday, without knowing anything about me, he gave me his only warm jacket. Katherine met Tom's gaze steadily. I'd like to return the favor, but I'd like to do it right. Tom studied her for a long moment. Behind him, through the small window, Katherine could see people beginning to stir in the shelter's main room. A volunteer was setting up the breakfast station. Someone was sweeping the floor with mechanical precision. That's him. Tom nodded toward the sweeper. Same time every morning. Military precision. Some habits don't fade. Katherine watched. Michael worked, noting the careful attention to each corner, the methodical progress across the floor. Even from here, she could see what Tom meant about old habits. He was Special Operations, Tom continued quietly. Air Force Pararescue, the elite of the elite. They go in when everything's gone wrong, pull out the wounded under impossible conditions. The motto is that others may live. The words hung in the air between them. Katherine thought about the bus stop, about a man with nothing giving away his last protection from the cold. Some habits really didn't fade. What happened? Tom's face tightened. That's his story to tell. What I can say is that he saved a lot of lives, and like too many others, he had trouble saving his own when he came home. Katherine pulled out her business card, gold embossed with her company logo. On the back, she wrote her personal cell number. I'd like to help, not just Michael, but others like him. My company has resources, opportunities. With all due respect, Ms. Reynolds, Tom interrupted gently, these men and women don't need charity. They need purpose, dignity, a chance to be useful again. I know, Katherine smiled, thinking of Eleanor's words so many years ago. I'm not giving you a job, Katherine. I'm giving you an opportunity to prove everyone else wrong. She pulled out a second document, the draft proposal she'd worked on all night. That's exactly what I had in mind. Would you be willing to look this over? Tell me if I'm on the right track? Tom took the proposal, his expression shifting as he read. Outside his office, Michael finished his sweeping, each movement as precise as the last. Katherine watched him check his watch, the one piece of his father's legacy he hadn't given away. Well, Tom set down the proposal, something new in his eyes. Maybe you do understand after all. He reached for his phone. Let me introduce you to Sarah. She knows Michael better than anyone here. Between the three of us, we might be able to build something real." Katherine felt a familiar spark of energy, the same one she'd felt starting her company, the thrill of seeing a new path forward. "That's all I'm asking for. A chance to try." Michael stared at the job application form on the shelter's meeting room table, his calloused fingers tracing the company letterhead. Sarah sat to his left, Tom to his right, while Katherine Reynolds, no longer the shivering woman from the bus stop, waited patiently across from them. "A veteran integration program?" Michael's voice was quiet, measuring each word. "And you want me to be the first?" "The pilot candidate," Katherine corrected gently. "There's a difference. This isn't a handout, Mr. Thompson. This is an opportunity to help build something from the ground up." Sarah leaned forward, her nurse's instincts reading the tension in his shoulders. "Tell him about the mentorship component, Ms. Reynolds." Katherine nodded, spreading out several documents. "Each participant will be paired with a senior executive, not just for job training, but for navigation, understanding corporate culture, building professional networks. In return, they'll help us develop the program for future candidates." Michael's eyes fell to the salary figure. It was more money than he'd seen since his service days. "Why me?" "Because you understand what it means to put others first." Katherine met his gaze. "Even when you have nothing left to give. That's exactly the kind of leadership we need." Tom shifted beside him, adding his own papers to the table. "I've seen your service record, Mike. The skills are there, the discipline, the strategic thinking. It's just a matter of translating them to a new environment, a corporate environment." Michael's tone carried a hint of skepticism. "With all due respect, ma'am, I'm not exactly suited for business meetings and PowerPoint presentations." Katherine smiled, surprising him with its warmth. "Neither was I when Eleanor Matthews took a chance on me 20 years ago. Sometimes the best qualification is the determination to prove everyone wrong." The room fell quiet. Through the window, Michael could see other shelter residents going about their morning routines. James practicing his typing at the ancient computer. Maria helping her kids with homework, each one carrying their own dreams of something better. "The program," he said finally, "it would expand to include others. That's the plan." Katherine's voice carried quiet conviction. "But it needs to start somewhere, with someone who understands both worlds." Michael picked up his father's watch, its familiar weight grounding him. He thought about the jacket, about split-second decisions that change lives, about all the times in the field when success or failure hinged on trusting your instincts. "There would be conditions," he said slowly. "Requirements for future candidates. Veterans are proud. They'll want to earn their place." Katherine's eyes lit up with understanding. "You'd help design those requirements, set the standards, make sure we do this right. And if it doesn't work out, then we learn from it," she replied simply. "Adjust, improve, try again. That's how meaningful change happens." Sarah touched his arm gently. "You've been looking for a way to make a difference again, Michael. Maybe this is it." He looked down at the application form again, seeing beyond the corporate logo to the possibilities it represented. Not just for him, but for others who would follow. Other veterans searching for purpose in a world that often seemed to have no place for them. "The jacket," he said suddenly. "You never asked why I gave it to you." Katherine shook her head. "I didn't need to. Some actions speak for themselves." Michael picked up the pen, its weight unfamiliar after years of penciled journal entries. "My father used to say that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being scared and doing the right thing anyway." "Smart man," Katherine smiled. "Yes, ma'am, he was." Michael began filling out the form, each letter precise and measured. "I think he'd say the same thing about second chances." Tom and Sarah exchanged glances as Michael worked, their eyes carrying years of hope for moments. Exactly like this. Katherine watched too, recognizing in his careful concentration the same fierce determination she'd once brought to her own fresh start. Outside, Chicago's morning traffic created a distant hum, a city waking to endless possibilities. In a small shelter meeting room, a new path was being forged, not just for one man, but for all those who would follow in his footsteps. The suit felt like a uniform of a different kind. Michael stood before the mirror in his temporary apartment, another part of the program's comprehensive approach, adjusting his tie for the 7th time. The charcoal grey fabric was perfectly tailored, a far cry from his shelter clothes or his old military gear. "You've got this," he muttered to his reflection, echoing Sarah's words from their goodbye at the shelter yesterday. His few possessions, the journal, his father's watch, and a small photo of his Air Force unit sat on the otherwise empty dresser. The company car was waiting outside, right on schedule. Another adjustment to process. Having a driver, an address, a business card with his name and the title, Program Development Specialist. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson." The driver nodded professionally. "Ms. Reynolds asked me to give you this." It was a small package, wrapped in simple brown paper. Inside, Michael found a leather portfolio and a note, "For new beginnings, KR." The drive to corporate headquarters passed in a blur of gleaming buildings and morning traffic. Michael's mind wandered to his last conversation with Tom before leaving the shelter. "Remember," Tom had said, "you're not just representing yourself, you're blazing a trail for others to follow." The lobby was a cathedral of glass and steel, employees streaming through security with practiced ease. Michael approached the desk, conscious of every step. "Michael Thompson for orientation," he stated clearly, presenting his new ID. The security guard, another veteran Michael noted from the subtle tells, gave him a warm smile. "Welcome aboard, sir. Jennifer from HR will be down to meet you." Jennifer turned out to be a brisk, efficient woman in her 30s who managed to make orientation feel like a tactical briefing. "Your office is on the 32nd floor, adjacent to Ms. Reynolds' suite. She believes in keeping the program visible to senior leadership." The elevator ride gave Michael time to center himself, falling back on his military training. Observe, adapt, complete the mission. The doors opened to reveal an open office landscape of glass, chrome, and quiet energy. Michael, Katherine Reynolds, appeared, extending her hand, ready to get started. His grip was firm, professional. "Yes, ma'am. First rule," she smiled. "In here it's Katherine. We're colleagues now." She led him through the office, making introductions. Michael noted the mix of reactions, curiosity, surprise, and occasional skepticism. News of the program had clearly spread. "This is your space," Katherine gestured to a corner office with clear views of the city. "I know it's different from what you're used to, but it's perfect," Michael interrupted, then caught himself. "I mean, thank you, Ma. Katherine." She smiled at his correction. "Your first meeting is in 30 minutes. The executive team wants to hear your ideas for the program's selection criteria." Michael touched his father's watch for reassurance. "Any advice? Be honest," Katherine said simply. "They don't need another yes man. They need someone who understands what we're trying to build." Left alone in his office, Michael opened his new portfolio. The leather was soft, expensive, but the paper inside was what caught his attention. Standard military grid paper, exactly what he'd used in his journal. He began to write, translating years of shelter observations and military experience into concrete proposals. By the time Jennifer arrived to escort him to the meeting, he had 3 pages of detailed notes. The conference room fell silent as he entered. 8 executive faces turned to study him, some curious, others reserved. "Mr. Thompson," Robert Chen, the CFO, gestured to an empty chair. "Perhaps you could start by telling us why you think you're qualified to help design this program." Michael took his seat, placed his father's watch on the table beside his notes. The weight of opportunity and responsibility settled on his shoulders, familiar as his old jacket. "With respect, sir," he began, his voice finding its strength. "I'll do better than tell you. I'll show you." Opening his portfolio, Michael began to outline his vision, not just for a program, but for a bridge between 2 worlds he now knew better than anyone else in the room. The social media post was simple, a photo of a jacket hanging in the company lobby with a small plaque reading, "Sometimes the greatest strength is choosing to be kind." Within hours, it had gone viral. Madison rushed into Katherine's office, tablet in hand. "Ms. Reynolds, you need to see this. The story's everywhere." Someone had connected the dots. The homeless veteran, the CEO, the new program. Local news wanted interviews. National outlets were calling, and our jacket of hope was trending. "Get me Michael," Katherine said, scanning the headlines. Her phone was already filling with messages from board members. Michael appeared in her doorway. Moments later, his new suit no longer looking quite so unfamiliar on his frame. 2 weeks into the program, he'd begun to carry himself with a subtle blend of military bearing and corporate polish. "The story's out," she told him unnecessarily. "How do you want to handle this?" He considered for a moment, the same thoughtful pause she'd come to respect in their planning meetings. "May I speak freely?" "Always. This isn't about me or the jacket," he said. "It's about all the others still out there. We could use this attention, direct it toward the bigger mission." Katherine smiled. It was exactly what she'd hoped he'd say. "The board wants us to do damage control. They're worried about the company's image being tied to homelessness." "With respect," Michael's jaw tightened slightly, "they're missing the point. This isn't about homelessness. It's about recognizing value in unexpected places." The media requests kept coming. Corporate communications wanted to craft a careful statement, something safe and sanitized. But Katherine had other ideas. "Tell me about your unit," she said suddenly. "In the Air Force." Michael's expression shifted, memories flickering behind his eyes. "Para-rescue. We went where others couldn't, or wouldn't, brought people home. And now?" He caught her meaning, nodded slowly. "Now we do the same thing, just different kinds of rescues." Katherine turned to Madison. "Set up a press conference, but we do this our way. No corporate script, just truth." The next morning, Katherine and Michael stood together before a forest of microphones. She'd insisted he wear his new suit rather than anything from corporate. "Wardrobe. 2 weeks ago," Katherine began, "I was just another person at a bus stop. What happened next taught me something corporate America often forgets. That character isn't found in a resume, and leadership isn't taught in business school." She stepped back, letting Michael take the podium. The cameras clicked rapidly, but he stood steady, grounded. "I gave away a jacket," he said simply. "Katherine Reynolds gave away something far more valuable, an opportunity, not just to me, but to every veteran out there, wondering if their service still matters in civilian life." The questions came rapid fire. About his background, the program, the future. Michael handled each with quiet dignity, neither hiding his past nor letting it define him. "Mr. Thompson, what would you say to other veterans in similar situations?" Michael touched his father's watch, a gesture Katherine had come to recognize as his moment of centering. "I'd tell them what my father told me, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is accept help, and that their skills, their dedication, their heart, these things are still needed, just in new ways." Later, watching the coverage play out across multiple networks, Katherine's executive team was divided. "It's risky," Robert insisted, "tying our brand to such a sensitive social issue." "It's honest," Katherine countered. "And it's necessary. Look," she pulled up her tablet, showing them the emails already flooding in. Other companies wanting to start similar programs, veterans reaching out, investment firms intrigued by the innovation. In his office, Michael was doing what he did best, turning inspiration into action. His whiteboard was filled with program frameworks, each informed by his unique perspective of both worlds. "We'll need to scale carefully," he told Katherine when she stopped by. "Maintain standards while opening doors." She watched him work, saw the same passion she'd first recognized at the bus stop, now focused and amplified. "You know what they're calling you on social media?" she asked. "The man who gave away everything and got it all back." Michael shook his head, smiling slightly. "No, I'm just the example, the proof that one moment of kindness can spark something bigger than ourselves." The employee ID badge swung from Michael's neck as he paced his office, phone pressed to his ear. "No, sir, that's not what I—" "Yes, I understand the PR value, but we're not looking for a quick fix here." He caught his reflection in the window, still sometimes startled by the sight of himself in business attire, 6 weeks into the program, and some days felt like walking a tightrope between two worlds. "Senator," he tried again, "I appreciate your interest, but we can't fast-track candidates just because they make good photo ops. The program has standards for a reason." Katherine paused in his doorway as he finished the call, recognizing the tension in his shoulders. Politicians. Third one this week. Michael sank into his chair. Everyone wants to be associated with success. "Welcome to corporate America." She settled into the visitor's chair. "How's the first group of candidates? Looking?" Michael gestured to his screen, where dozens of applications filled a spreadsheet. "Promising. But there's something else we need to discuss." He pulled up an email from the HR department. The corporate language was polite but clear. Concerns about cultural fit and professional readiness had been raised by some middle managers. "They're worried," Michael said quietly, "that bringing in more veterans will change the company culture, make things too military." Katherine read between the lines. "You mean they're worried about losing their comfortable status quo?" "Some of the candidates have noticed." Michael's jaw tightened. The looks, the whispers. One of them, a former Navy corpsman, asked if we were just here to be corporate mascots. The question hit close to home. Last week's management meeting had included subtle suggestions about using the program more prominently in marketing materials, as if their veterans were props rather than professionals. "Show me what you're thinking," Katherine said, recognizing his expression. Michael opened his journal, no longer tattered but still essential. "We need internal advocates, not just at the top level but throughout the company. People who understand both languages." He outlined his plan, a mentorship network that went both ways. Veterans would learn corporate culture, yes, but executives would also learn military values. Leadership seminars, team-building exercises, real integration, not just inclusion. "It's ambitious," Katherine noted. "It's necessary." Michael pulled out his father's watch, an unconscious habit when making important points. These men and women, they're not looking for handouts or photo ops. They're looking for a chance to serve again, just in a different uniform. A knock at the door interrupted them. Madison entered with a stack of press requests. "The morning shows want follow-up interviews, and the Wall Street Journal is asking about the program's impact on quarterly earnings." Katherine waved her off. "Later." She turned back to Michael. "You know, some people are saying we're moving too fast, that we should scale back, take it slower. And what do you say?" "I say we're not moving fast enough." She stood. "Decision made. Draft a proposal for your mentorship network. Full details. No corporate sugarcoating. I want the real challenges and the real solutions." Michael nodded, already reaching for his laptop, but Katherine wasn't finished. "And Michael, next week's board meeting, I want you to present it. Not me, not HR, you." He looked up, surprised. "Some of them still see me as the homeless veteran?" Katherine smiled. "Then show them who you really are, who all our veterans really are." After she left, Michael sat for a long moment, staring at the jacket hanging in the lobby below. 6 weeks ago, it had been keeping him warm on the streets. Now it was a symbol of something larger, something that frightened some and inspired others. His phone buzzed, a text from Sarah at the shelter. Another potential candidate needed interview coaching. Michael checked his calendar, already full of meetings and deadlines, then remembered something his father used to say. "Leadership isn't about having time. It's about making time." He texted back, "Send them over, we'll make it work." Opening a new document, Michael began to write. Not just a proposal, but a vision, one that would bridge the gap between what people thought they knew about veterans and what veterans could actually do. His ID badge caught the afternoon light, the company logo gleaming. Different uniform, same mission, that others may live, that others may thrive. The old newspaper clipping fell from Michael's father's watch as he was cleaning it. Yellowed and creased, it had been tucked into the back of the case so long he'd forgotten it was there. The headline caught his eye. "Local hero dies saving family." His hands trembled as he read the faded text. A car accident 15 years ago. A family trapped in a burning vehicle. An off-duty firefighter who gave his life getting them out. The firefighter's name, James Reynolds. Katherine's father. Michael sat heavily in his office chair, memories flooding back. He'd been deployed when it happened, but he remembered the story. His father had kept the clipping, telling him, "This is what real courage looks like, son. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things." Now, staring at the photo of James Reynolds in his firefighter uniform, Michael saw Katherine's eyes looking back at him. The same determined set of the jaw, the same unflinching gaze. His phone buzzed, Katherine requesting their weekly program. Review. How could he tell her? Should he? The walk to her office felt longer than usual. Through the glass walls, he could see her working, completely unaware of the connection about to be revealed. "Michael!" She looked up as he entered. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Maybe I have." He placed the clipping on her desk, watching as recognition dawned in her eyes. Katherine's hand went to her throat. "Where did you get this?" "My father kept it, said it reminded him what real heroes look like." Michael swallowed hard. "I never made the connection until now. Your father died saving a family." Katherine's voice was soft, her fingers tracing the photograph. "I was in college. Got the call during finals week." The silence between them hummed with unspoken understanding. Both of them shaped by fathers who put others first, who gave everything, including their lives, for strangers. "The jacket," Katherine said suddenly. "When you gave it to me at the bus stop, something about the gesture felt familiar. Now I know why." Michael nodded. "Like father, like daughter, like father, like son." "The board meeting tomorrow." Katherine looked up sharply. "The expansion proposal. Should we postpone? Given this—" "No," her voice was firm. "This makes it more important. This is why we're doing this, Michael. This is why it matters." Later that evening, after most employees had gone home, they sat in Katherine's office sharing stories about James Reynolds, the firefighter who worked extra shifts to pay for his daughters' college applications. About Senior Master Sergeant Thompson, who kept a newspaper clipping about another man's courage to teach his son about real strength. "He would have been proud," Katherine said softly. "Your father, seeing you now, what you're building. Yours, too," Michael replied, "continuing his legacy of saving people, just in a different way." The city lights twinkled beyond the windows, each one representing someone's story, someone's chance for transformation. Tomorrow they would face the board, argue for expansion, push for more resources. But tonight they were just two people understanding how past and present weave together in unexpected ways. "You know what this means," Katherine said, holding up the clipping. "We're not just building a program anymore. We're honoring their memory, their sacrifice." Michael touched his father's watch, thinking of all the pieces that had led to this moment. The jacket, the bus stop, the newspaper clipping hidden away for 15 years. "That others may live," he quoted his old unit motto. Katherine smiled, understanding that others may have a chance, like we did. As they finally prepared to leave for the night, Michael paused at her door. "Katherine, thank you for helping me understand what my father meant about ordinary people doing extraordinary things." "Thank you," she replied, "for showing me that my father's spirit of sacrifice lives on, even in unexpected places." The newspaper clipping now held a place of honor on Katherine's desk, protected in a simple frame. A reminder that sometimes the greatest connections are forged in moments of sacrifice, and that courage, true courage, echoes across generations, building bridges between past and present, between loss and hope, between two people destined to continue their father's legacies of changing lives. The resignation letter sat unopened on Michael's desk like a live grenade. James Martinez, one of their most promising veteran candidates, had walked out during orientation after overhearing a senior VP refer to the program as corporate charity cases. "It's not just Martinez," Michael told Katherine as they sat in her office for an emergency meeting. "3 other candidates are considering withdrawing. The corporate culture isn't changing fast enough." Katherine's face was grim as she reviewed the latest reports. Complaints from middle management about disruption to workplace dynamics, whispers about preferential treatment, even suggestions that the program was damaging company morale. "The board's called an emergency session for tomorrow morning," she said. "Robert's leading the opposition. He's arguing that the program's costs outweigh its benefits." Michael's jaw tightened. Costs? What about Jason in accounting? He reorganized their entire filing system using military logistics principles, or Sarah in HR. She's revolutionized their crisis management protocols. "I know." Katherine's voice was tired. "But they're looking at quarterly numbers, not long-term impact." The knock at her door was sharp, urgent. Madison entered with a tablet displaying breaking news. "Corporate inclusion program, innovation or PR stunt." The article was devastating. Anonymous sources within the company questioning the program's authenticity, suggesting it was all for show. "They're saying we're using veterans as props." Michael's voice was cold with anger. "That the whole thing is just elaborate marketing." Katherine stood, pacing to her window. Below, the jacket still hung in the lobby, its presence both a symbol and now, somehow, an accusation. "What are you thinking?" Michael touched his father's watch, then the ID badge that had come to mean so much. "I'm thinking about Martinez, about all of them, about what it means to fight battles that matter." He pulled out his own resignation letter, drafted late last night when the weight of resistance had felt overwhelming. Katherine saw it and understood immediately. "You're not quitting." "No," he agreed, tearing the letter in half. "I'm not. But I need to speak to the board tomorrow. No filters, no corporate polish, just truth." Katherine studied him for a long moment. "They won't like it. Robert especially. He's been waiting for an excuse to shut us down." "Then let them hear exactly what they'd be shutting down." Michael's voice carried the same quiet authority he'd had in combat. Not just a program, not just numbers on a spreadsheet, but real people, real lives, real transformation. Through the glass walls, they could see other program veterans at their desks, working with the same dedication they'd once brought to military service. Each one a story of resilience, of reinvention, of bridges built between worlds that seemed impossibly far apart. "Bring Martinez," Katherine decided suddenly, "and the others who are thinking of leaving. Let the board see exactly what they're about to lose." Michael nodded, already reaching for his phone. "They deserve to be heard. The board will say it's inappropriate, that there's a proper chain of command. Then they'll learn something about how real leaders listen to hard truths." Michael stood, his decision made. "In the field, you don't abandon your people just because the mission gets tough. You adapt, you overcome, you find a way forward." Katherine smiled, recognizing in him the same spirit that had made him give away his jacket on a cold morning. "You know this could end badly, for both of us." "My father kept that article about your dad for a reason," Michael replied. "Because real courage means doing the right thing, even when it costs you everything." As they prepared for tomorrow's confrontation, Michael sent a simple message to Martinez and the others. "Your voice matters. Your story matters. Be ready to tell it." The night grew late, city lights twinkling like distant stars. In the quiet of his office, Michael opened his journal one last time, writing what might be his final entry as program development specialist. "Some battles you fight, not because you can win, but because they need fighting. Tomorrow, we stand for something bigger than ourselves. Tomorrow we show them what real courage looks like." The boardroom fell silent as Michael entered, followed by Katherine and 5 veterans in business attire. The board members exchanged uncomfortable glances. This wasn't the standard protocol they'd expected. "What is the meaning of this?" Robert Chen stood, his face flushed. "This meeting is for board members only." "Actually," Katherine took her seat calmly, "as CEO, I have the authority to invite relevant stakeholders, and no one is more relevant to this discussion than the people whose lives we're deciding." Michael remained standing, every inch the military officer he'd once been. "Ladies and gentlemen of the board, you've seen the numbers, the costs, the projections, the risks. Now I'd like you to see something else." He gestured to James Martinez, who stepped forward. The young former Marine's hands were steady as he placed his own resignation letter on the table. "3 weeks ago," Martinez began, "I was ready to quit. Not because I couldn't do the job. I've exceeded every performance metric since I started. I wanted to quit because I heard one of your VPs call us charity cases." The board shifted uncomfortably. Robert tried to interrupt, but Katherine held up her hand. "Let him finish." "But then I remembered something from my Marine days," Martinez continued. "You don't abandon your post just because the mission gets hard. You find a way to complete it, to make it better." One by one, the other veterans stepped forward. Sarah Chen from HR, no relation to Robert, describing how her combat medical experience had revolutionized crisis response protocols. Jason Matthews, from accounting, explaining how military logistics principles had saved the department thousands of hours in processing time. Michael watched the board's faces as each veteran spoke, saw the shift from discomfort to attention to growing understanding. "You're not just looking at costs," he said finally. "You're looking at investment in human capital, at innovation born from diversity of experience, at leadership forged in the hardest circumstances imaginable." He pulled out his father's watch, placed it on the table. 15 years ago, Katherine's father gave his life saving a family from a burning car. My father kept the newspaper article to teach me about real courage, about doing the right thing, even when it's hard. Katherine stood now, too, moving to Michael's side. "This program isn't about charity or PR. It's about recognizing that sometimes the greatest assets come in unexpected packages. That leadership isn't learned in business school alone." Robert Chen was still standing, but his expression had changed. "The shareholders will understand that true value isn't just measured in quarterly reports," Katherine interrupted. "That sometimes the bravest business decision is to stand by your principles." The chairman of the board, silent until now, leaned forward. "What exactly are you proposing?" Michael met his gaze steadily. "Not just continuation of the program, but expansion, real integration at every level. A commitment to changing not just lives, but the entire corporate culture." He turned to Martinez and the others. "Show them the proposal." Together they laid out their vision, a comprehensive plan for true organizational transformation. Mentorship flowing both ways, veterans bringing military precision and crisis management skills, executives learning about leadership under pressure. The board deliberated for hours. When the final vote came, it wasn't unanimous. Change never is, but it was enough. The program would continue with expanded funding and support. As they left the boardroom, Martinez touched Michael's shoulder. "That was a hell of a fight, sir." Michael smiled, thinking of a cold bus stop and a split-second decision that had started it all. Some fights are worth having, some changes worth making. Katherine caught his eye across the room, her own smile reflecting their shared understanding. They'd done more than save a program today. They'd shown that bridges between worlds could be built, that value could be found in unexpected places, that courage wore many uniforms. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles to fight, but tonight they had stood their ground. Tonight they had honored their father's legacies. Tonight they had proved that sometimes the greatest victories come not from avoiding conflict, but from facing it with principle and purpose. The stack of letters on Michael's desk grew taller each day. Not complaints or resignations this time, but testimonials. Stories of transformation that had begun with a jacket and a bus stop and now rippled outward in ever-widening circles. "Another one," Madison said, delivering the morning mail. "This time from Seattle, a tech company wanting to replicate our program." Michael added it to the pile, next to thank you notes from veterans who'd found their footing in the corporate world. 3 months after the board showdown, their initiative had taken on a life of its own. "Have you seen this?" Katherine appeared in his doorway, holding up the Wall Street Journal. Their program was featured in a front-page article about innovative corporate inclusion strategies. But it wasn't the headline that made Michael smile. It was the photo beneath it, Robert Chen working alongside Martinez in the new veteran mentorship exchange. "He's actually one of our strongest advocates now," Katherine said, settling into her usual chair. "Says the military approach to problem-solving has transformed his department's efficiency." Michael nodded, thinking of the unlikely alliances that had formed. Former Marines teaching executives about crisis management, Army logistics specialists revolutionizing supply chains, combat medics bringing battlefield clarity to corporate decision-making. "Tom called from St. Mark's," he told her. "Their veteran employment rate is up 60%. Other shelters are asking to participate." Katherine picked up one of the letters, reading aloud. "Before this program, I thought my service was behind me. Now I understand it was preparing me for a different kind of mission." Through the window, they could see one of their newest hires, a former Air Force navigator, leading a project team meeting. Her confidence was obvious, her military precision perfectly adapted to corporate demands. "We're getting interest from overseas," Katherine continued. "Companies in Europe, Asia. They're starting to see that this isn't just about veterans, it's about recognizing untapped potential everywhere." The transformation wasn't just external. Within their own company, walls had begun to crumble. The same VP who'd once dismissed them as charity cases had recently requested more veteran transfers to his division, citing their exceptional problem-solving skills and leadership qualities. Sarah from HR appeared with fresh statistics. Departments with veteran team members showed improved efficiency, higher morale, better crisis management scores. The program wasn't just changing lives. It was revolutionizing how the company operated. "There's something else," Katherine said, pulling out another document. "The board approved our foundation proposal. We can start offering grants to other companies wanting to build similar programs." Michael touched his father's watch, its familiar weight a reminder of how far they'd come. "It's not just about jobs anymore, is it? It's about changing how people see value, how they understand service." "Speaking of service," Katherine smiled, "Martinez asked me to remind you about tonight's mentorship dinner. Apparently, some of our executives requested extra sessions on military leadership principles." The irony wasn't lost on either of them. The very qualities that some had once seen as liabilities had become sought-after assets. The precision, the dedication, the ability to perform under pressure, all now recognized as vital corporate skills. A new letter caught Michael's eye, its military creases precise and familiar. Inside was a simple message from a veteran who just completed his first month in the program. "For the first time since leaving service, I feel like I'm part of something bigger than myself again." That was the real victory, Michael realized. Not the press coverage or corporate accolades, but the restoration of purpose, the bridge built between two worlds that had seemed impossibly far apart. "Your father would be proud," Katherine said softly, seeing his expression. "Both our fathers would be," Michael nodded, thinking of that newspaper clipping, of courage passed down through generations, of sacrifice rippling outward to touch countless lives. "They taught us well," he replied, "about what matters, about how to make a difference." Outside his office, the company hummed with energy. Veterans and executives working side by side, each learning from the other, all part of something revolutionary, something that had started with a simple act of kindness on a cold morning. and grown into a movement that was changing not just their company, but the very nature of corporate culture itself. The new corporate policy document landed on desks company-wide on a Tuesday morning. Its title was simple: Integration and Innovation, a new standard for corporate culture. But its impact would be anything but simple. Michael stood before the executive training room, watching as senior leaders filed in for the mandatory session. 6 months ago, these same executives had viewed the veteran program with skepticism. Now they were here to learn from it. "Ready?" Katherine asked, joining him at the podium. "Born ready," he replied, echoing his old military response. But this wasn't a military briefing. This was something new, a fusion of two worlds that had once seemed incompatible. Martinez, now promoted to department head of strategic operations, started the presentation. Leadership isn't about where you learned it, it's about how you apply it. The new guidelines were comprehensive. Military-style after-action reviews adapted for corporate projects. Crisis management protocols drawn from battlefield experience. Team-building exercises that blended corporate strategy with military precision. "We're not trying to turn the company into a military unit," Michael explained to the attentive room. "We're taking the best of both worlds to create something better than either." The changes were already showing results. Employee satisfaction. Scores had risen 30%. Project completion rates were up. Crisis response times had been cut in half. Robert Chen, their once skeptical CFO, stood to share his own experience. "I used to think military leadership was all about giving orders. Now I understand it's about building trust, adapting to challenges, and never leaving anyone behind." Katherine watched from the side, seeing how naturally Michael commanded the room. No longer the homeless veteran from the bus stop, but not quite the corporate executive either. He'd become something new, a bridge between worlds, showing others how to cross. "The future of business isn't about maintaining barriers," she added, stepping forward. "It's about breaking them down, finding value in unexpected places, learning from every experience." They unveiled the new mentorship expansion. Every department would now have veteran advisors. Every new project would incorporate military-tested, problem-solving strategies. The company wasn't just hiring veterans, it was learning from them. "This isn't just our story anymore," Michael concluded, touching his father's watch. "It's becoming an industry standard, a new way of seeing potential, a new way of building success." After the presentation, other companies' representatives approached with questions, eager to implement similar changes. The barriers weren't just falling within their organization, they were crumbling across the corporate landscape. "You've started a revolution," Katherine told him later, as they watched another veteran team lead a crisis management workshop. "But not the kind anyone expected." Michael nodded, thinking of how far they'd come. The jacket in the lobby had become more than a symbol. It was a reminder that sometimes the greatest changes start with the simplest actions. "We're not just changing policies," he said. "We're changing mindsets, showing that strength comes in many forms. That leadership speaks many languages." The day ended with a new round of program applications, not just from veterans now, but from companies wanting to join the transformation. Each one represented another barrier ready to fall, another bridge waiting to be built. Sarah from HR dropped off the latest numbers, retention rates at record, highs, productivity soaring, innovation metrics breaking previous records. But it was the less measurable changes that meant the most. The new confidence in veteran employees' eyes, the seamless collaboration between military and civilian approaches, the sense of shared purpose that pervaded every level of the company. "Your father saw potential in unexpected places," Katherine said, looking at the newspaper clipping on her desk. "So did mine. They'd be amazed to see how far that vision has spread." Michael smiled, watching another veteran team lead an executive training session across the hall. They taught us to break down barriers, to see beyond the surface, to recognize that courage and capability come in many forms. The sun set over the city skyline, casting long shadows through the office windows. But within the building, old shadows were fading, old barriers falling, as a new kind of corporate culture took shape, one built on the understanding that the greatest strength comes not from maintaining walls, but from breaking them down. Winter had returned to Chicago, bringing with it memories of that fateful morning at the bus stop. But this year, the cold carried a different meaning. In the company lobby, beside the now famous jacket, stood boxes overflowing with new winter coats, the first initiative of their newly launched foundation. Over 1,000 coats collected, Martinez reported, checking his tablet. Every shelter in the city will receive a delivery today. Michael nodded, adjusting the coat collection sign. Make sure St. Mark's gets the first shipment. That's where it all started. The one-year anniversary celebration was set for that evening, but the real commemoration was happening now, in the quiet of early morning. Katherine had arrived early, standing before the jacket display with a cup of coffee in her hands. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Michael asked, joining her. "Just thinking about how much can change in a year," she replied. "How many lives can be transformed by one moment of kindness." The lobby began filling with employees, veterans and executives alike, carrying more coats to add to the collection. Each donation came with a story, a connection, a recognition of the bridge that had been built between giving and receiving. Sarah from HR approached with the latest statistics. 300 veterans placed in corporate positions. 92% retention rate. 18 companies have adopted our model, and those are just the numbers we can measure. "And the immeasurable ones?" Katherine asked. "Those are the best kind," Sarah smiled, gesturing to where Robert Chen was helping a veteran adjust his tie before a client meeting. "The kind that change hearts and minds." The morning's news played on the lobby screens, showing other companies launching their own veteran integration programs. What had started as one jacket given freely had grown into a movement, spreading across industries and cities. Tom Wheeler arrived from St. Mark's with a group of potential candidates. The shelter coordinator looked around the lobby with pride, seeing so many of his former residents now in business attire, leading teams, making decisions. "Remember what you told me that first morning?" he asked Michael. "About wanting to do this right?" Michael touched his father's watch, its weight now a comfort rather than a reminder. "Seems like a lifetime ago." "You did it right," Tom assured him. "You both did." The day unfolded with a steady stream of visitors, media crews documenting. The coat drive, business leaders seeking advice on starting their own programs, veterans looking for a chance to continue their service in a new way. "Michael," Katherine called from her office later that afternoon, "there's someone here you should meet." He entered to find an elderly woman seated across from Katherine's desk, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "This is Mrs. Martinez," Katherine introduced. "James's grandmother." "I had to come," the woman said, reaching for Michael's hand. "Had to thank you both. James, he was so lost after his service. Now he calls me every Sunday, telling me about his projects, his team, his future." Michael thought of his own journey, of the path from that cold bus stop to this warm office. "We just opened a door," he said. "Your grandson walked through it on his own strength." The evening's anniversary celebration was more than a corporate event. It was a testament to the power of seeing value in unexpected places, of building bridges between worlds, of recognizing that every act of kindness carries the potential for transformation. Katherine took the podium, her voice carrying across the packed auditorium. "1 year ago, a simple act of compassion reminded us what real leadership looks like. Today, we're not just celebrating a successful program. We're celebrating a new understanding of what's possible when we break down barriers and build up people." In the audience, Michael sat between Tom and Sarah, surrounded by the fruits of their shared vision. Veterans in business suits chatting with executives about strategy. Former skeptics turned strongest advocates, lives transformed, purposes renewed. Outside, the winter wind still blew cold, but inside, warmth spread through stories shared, barriers broken, and bridges built. The ice jacket hung in its place of honor, no longer just a symbol of what was given away, but of everything that had been gained in return. The Foundation Charter gleamed in its leather portfolio, fresh signatures drying on the final page. Michael traced the embossed logo, a jacket silhouette surrounded by the words, "Bridge Builders Foundation, connecting service to opportunity." "It's really happening," Katherine said, reviewing the document one last time. "A permanent commitment to continuing what we started." The boardroom buzzed with energy as their team finalized the details. What had begun as a corporate program was evolving into something larger, more enduring. The foundation would operate independently, funded by a coalition of companies who'd seen the value of veteran integration firsthand. "National rollout begins next month," Martinez reported, pulling up the implementation schedule. 20 cities in the first phase. Each hub will have veteran advisors, corporate partners, and direct shelter connections. Robert Chen, now the Foundation's treasurer, nodded approvingly. The financial model is solid, self-sustaining within 3 years, with potential for significant expansion. Michael watched them work. These people who'd become so much more than colleagues. Each one carried a piece of the vision, had helped shape it into something bigger than any of them had imagined. "We're getting applications from overseas," Sarah added. "Companies in London, Singapore, Toronto, they want to replicate our success." Katherine turned to Michael. "Ready for your new role? Director of Global Implementation is a big step up from Program Development Specialist." He smiled, adjusting his tie. No longer an unfamiliar gesture. "Just another mission, ma'am, that others may thrive." The Foundation's scope went beyond employment now. Veterans would help design corporate training programs, advise on leadership development, create crisis management protocols. Their experience would shape the future of business culture itself. "Tom's agreed to head our shelter outreach division," Katherine announced. "He'll coordinate with facilities nationwide, identify candidates, build support networks." Through the windows, they could see construction crews preparing the building next door, the Foundation's future headquarters. A place where military precision would meet corporate innovation, where service would find new purpose. "Your fathers would be proud," Sarah said softly, looking at both Katherine and Michael. "They'd understand exactly what you've built here." Michael touched his watch, thinking of newspaper clippings and jackets given freely, of firefighters and airmen who taught their children about courage and sacrifice, of legacies that lived on in unexpected ways. The Foundation's mission statement hung framed on the wall, words they'd crafted together over long nights and countless revisions, to recognize that service knows no uniform, that leadership speaks many languages, and that the greatest bridges are built by those who understand both worlds. "We're not just building a program anymore," Katherine reflected. "We're building a movement, a way of thinking about potential and purpose." Martinez pulled up the latest statistics. Thousands of veterans placed, hundreds of companies transformed, dozens of cities waiting to join the initiative. Numbers that represented not just success, but lives changed, barriers broken, futures reclaimed. "The real legacy," Michael said, "isn't in these numbers. It's in what happens next, in who comes after us." They'd created something that would outlast them all. A system for recognizing value in unexpected places, for transforming service into opportunity, for building bridges between worlds that had seemed impossibly far apart. The day ended with a call from St. Mark's. Another veteran had found their way there, carrying combat memories and uncertain dreams. But now there was a path forward, a bridge to cross, a future to build. "Tell them to come in tomorrow," Michael said. "Tell them to bring their story, their strength, their service. Tell them there's a place where all of it matters." Outside, His office, the city lights began to twinkle on, each one representing a life waiting to be transformed. The foundation would reach them all, one bridge at a time, one story at a time, one act of recognition at a time. Katherine joined him at the window. "You know what this means? That jacket of yours. It's going to keep giving warmth long after we're gone." Michael nodded, understanding. Some legacies weren't built in stone or steel, but in the bridges. They built, the paths they opened, the lives they changed. In the end, that was the greatest legacy of all. The graduation certificates caught the morning light, 100 of them arranged carefully on tables in the company auditorium. Each bore a name, a date, and 2 logos, the company's and the Bridge Builders Foundation's. "First National Class," Michael said, straightening one slightly askew certificate, "from 20 different cities." Katherine watched the graduates filing in, veterans from every branch of service, each now ready to take their place in corporate leadership roles across the country. They carried themselves with a unique blend of military bearing and business. Polish, the perfect embodiment of the bridge they'd helped build. "Remember when we thought success meant placing 10 veterans in one company?" she mused. "Now look at us." The ceremony was being live-streamed to foundation offices nationwide. On screens around the auditorium, faces appeared from Seattle, Miami, Boston, Houston, each location with its own story of transformation, its own bridges built. Martinez took the podium first, his position as Strategic Operations Director, now expanded to include oversight of national training standards. "When I started this program, I thought I was learning a new way to serve. What I discovered was that I never stopped serving. I just found a new mission." The graduates nodded in understanding. Each had gone through the same journey, discovering how their military experience translated into valuable corporate skills. Each had helped refine the program, making it stronger, more effective, more meaningful. "Leadership isn't about the uniform you wear," Martinez continued. "It's about the principles you carry, the dedication you bring, the people you lift up along the way." Michael watched from the side, thinking of his own journey from that cold bus stop to this moment. Sarah from HR sat in the front row, tears in her eyes as she saw her training protocols being recognized as national standards. Tom Wheeler beamed with pride. Half the graduates had come through his shelter network. Robert Chen presented the financial impact statistics. Increased productivity, improved retention rates, enhanced crisis management capabilities. But it was the personal stories that carried the real weight. The veterans who'd found new purpose, the companies that had discovered unexpected strength, the communities that had been enriched by these connections. Katherine took the stage. Last, her presence commanding yet warm. "Today isn't just about certificates and accomplishments. It's about proving that value comes in many forms. That service never really ends. It just transforms." She gestured to the jacket, now permanently displayed in a case near the stage. "This program started with one simple act of kindness. It grew because people like you understood that every skill, every experience, every moment of service has a value. You just need the right bridge to cross, the right opportunity to shine." The graduates rose as their names were called, each with a story of transformation. A former Marine who now led crisis response teams, an Army logistics officer revolutionizing supply chain management, an Air Force navigator designing new approaches to project planning. "You're not just graduates," Michael told them during his closing remarks. "You're bridge builders. Each of you will go on to create new connections, new opportunities, new understanding in your organizations." After the ceremony, they gathered for photos and celebrations. Families beamed with pride. Corporate partners exchanged cards. New friendships were cemented. The Foundation's network grew stronger with each handshake, each shared story, each promise to stay connected. "What's next?" Katherine asked Michael as they watched the celebrations. He touched his father's watch, its familiar weight now a reminder of not just the past, but the future they were building. We keep building bridges, keep opening doors, keep showing the world that service and success speak the same language. Through the windows, they could see the next class arriving for orientation. More veterans ready to transform their service into corporate success. More bridges waiting to be built. More lives ready to be changed. "Your father would love this," Katherine said softly. "Both our fathers would." Michael nodded, watching the new arrivals, each one carrying the same mix of uncertainty and determination he'd once felt. Each one about to discover that their greatest service might still lie ahead. "That's the thing about bridges," he replied. "Once you build them, you never know how many lives they'll touch, how many journeys they'll make possible." 2 years to the day after Michael gave away his jacket, he stood in the lobby of the Bridge Builders Foundation's new headquarters. The jacket still hung in its place of honor, but now it was surrounded by photographs, hundreds of them, each telling a story of transformation. "Quite a morning commute," Katherine said, joining him. "Every bus stop I passed had someone wearing one of our foundation's coats." Michael smiled, remembering the cold morning that had started it all. Different, kind of warmth now. The lobby buzzed with activity as visitors arrived for the Foundation's International Symposium. Corporate leaders from 4 continents all gathered to learn about a program that had started with one simple act of kindness. "Your father's watch still keeping perfect time?" Katherine asked. Michael checked it reflexively. "Always, just like his principles." They moved through the crowd together, greeting familiar faces. Martinez, now the Foundation's Global Operations Director. Sarah, heading their International Training Division. Robert Chen, who'd become one of their strongest advocates and most dedicated supporters. "Look who's here!" Katherine nodded toward the entrance. Tom Wheeler was helping a new veteran through the doors, just as he'd once helped Michael. The cycle continuing, the bridge extending, one life at a time. "Some people asked me to retire last year," Tom said, joining them. "I told them I'll stop when the need stops. So far, I'm keeping busy." Through the windows, they could see the city stretching out before them. Somewhere out there, a bus stop stood as an unmarked monument to the power of simple kindness, to the courage it takes to give when you have nothing, to the wisdom of seeing value in unexpected places. "You know what I've learned?" Michael said, watching another group of veterans enter, their military bearing now softened with corporate confidence. A bridge isn't just something you cross, it's something you become. Katherine touched the newspaper clipping she still kept on her desk, her father's face smiling out from worn newsprint. "They taught us well, didn't they? Your father, mine, about what really matters. That others may live," Michael quoted his old unit motto, "that others may thrive." The morning sun caught the jacket in its display case, lighting it up like a beacon, not just a piece of clothing anymore, but a symbol of everything they'd built together. Every life changed, every barrier broken, every bridge constructed between worlds that had once seemed impossibly far apart. "Ready for the next chapter?" Katherine asked. Michael looked around at the legacy they'd built, not in brick and steel, but in transformed lives and renewed purpose, in bridges that would stand long after they were gone. "Always ready," he replied. "There are still bridges to build." Outside, Chicago's winter winds still blew cold, but now it carried the warmth of possibility, of purpose rediscovered, of service renewed. One simple act of kindness had started it all, but it was the countless acts of courage, dedication, and vision that had turned that moment into a movement. The jacket hung in its place of honor, a reminder that sometimes the greatest journeys start with letting go, that sometimes the most valuable things we possess are the ones we give away, that sometimes the strongest bridges are built by those who know what it means to cross the widest gaps. And somewhere in the city, at a bus stop unchanged by time, the next chapter was already beginning. Another story of service finding new purpose, another bridge waiting to be built, another life ready to be transformed by the simple profound. Truth that courage and kindness speak the same language, wear many uniforms, and build bridges that last forever.